Okay, so we did 2020 last time, which was Makalel Aviv Imo Yidach Nero Be'eshun Choshech, which we translated as one who curses his father and mother, his candle or his lamp will be extinguished, or it'll flicker out in the blackness of night. Okay, and questions were, we had a lot of questions. What does curse mean? And like, are there different levels? Like, is cursing just like the worst of a whole category of bad stuff, or is it specifically cursing and like other stuff is not included, like disrespecting? Two, who is hearing the curse? Meaning, is it specifically if you curse them to their face, or is it just like if you're cursing them in general, it doesn't really matter if they're hearing? And we saw in the halacha that even if you curse your parents after they die, that still is the isser. So like that was something just to note. Three, is this describing one act of cursing, or is this like a trend, like a guy who is a cursor of his parents? Or what if they deserve it? Okay, meaning is it only bad to curse because they are not bad people, or is it just the act of cursing even if they're bad? Five, what's the mashal of ner? Six, what's the mashal of flickering out? Seven, what's the cause and effect relationship between the cursing and the ner going out? Eight, when it says father and mother, is it specifically both parents, or could it even be one? And then does this apply to like other people than your parents, like authority figures, other family members, etc.? Nine, what is the blackness of night? Is that the thing that is causing the flickering out, like it'll flicker out because of the blackness of night, or is it when it gets dark and you need a candle, then now it matters? What's the idea there? Who's the son in the context? Is this like literally a biological son, or does it have to be like a kid? Could it be an adult? And then 11, why does this guy curse his father and mother, or does that even matter? Okay, so it's been a long time since Monday. I think the only thing I remember at the moment was Ariel's interpretation, linking this to Kibbud Avim, that the Chazal equate Kibbud Avim with honoring God. And the Sefer Chinuch explains basically that by recognizing that your existence was caused through your parents, and recognizing that like you owe your existence to them, even no matter how they treat you, no matter what, that's a vehicle for recognizing Hashem. So if you are cursing your parents, which I don't even think we went into like what that means, then it is reflecting on that idea where you are at very least expressing like a lack of gratitude to the causes of your existence, and that can affect other stuff. But I don't even think we developed that. We did say there that I think if you said, one more possibility. We also said ner in Mishlei could either be your soul or it could be mitzvah. So I think I said that for that approach, soul made more sense because it's actually affecting your perfection. Like if you're resentful towards your parents who are the cause of your existence, or if the way, especially if you're talking about a kid, that the way that people relate to reality is shaped by the way they relate to their parents. So then the attitude that you have towards your parents and the way that you treat them is going to affect how you relate to reality as a whole. So if you're, let's say, resentful towards your parents for instructing you or giving you discipline, you're going to be resentful towards reality for forcing you to do stuff or for having consequences and stuff like that. So that's going to affect your soul. And it's going to be you have any idea for what it would mean in the darkness of night? If we could work that out, because then we'd have a full idea. It would also be nice if we could explain cursing in a more specific way, not just like relating disrespectfully. I actually have something which might help. This is actually, I did this for my Rambam Bekios here, but I'm realizing it might be very relevant. Let's just see if this sparks anything. So I have the Sefer Mitzvos in the Rambam on the lo tase of cursing people. And he gives this interesting explanation, and maybe this will shed light here. Okay, so let's see. It is, Shin Yud Zion. Let me just get it up here. Sefer, even got to be here somewhere. Rambam, Sefer. Oh, there we go. Low Sasef 317. Second, share screen. Okay, yeah. So we're not gonna read the whole thing. We're just gonna read the first part. So, oh, hey, how's it going? So we decided to go back to the pasuk we were doing on Monday, and then this is for Rambam Bakius, but it might help. The mitzvah. So the pasuk was, pasuk was one who curses his father and mother, his candle will flicker out, and in the blackness of night, right? So look at Shin Yud Zayin in Sefer Mitzvos. So this is a mitzvah hashavav esrei ushlosh meos ha'ashara shu esharnu lo lakalel shum adam Yisrael. So this is the prohibition against cursing any Jew. V'hu amru lo sakal cheresh. And the pasuk says, do not curse a deaf person. Ushmami meni inyan amru cheresh mahu. So hear from me the idea of who is a cheresh, who is a deaf person. V'hu, namely, kasher hanefesh, or this is where he defines what cursing is. Kasher, and I don't know if this is relevant, but let's put it this way: if the pasuk in Mishlei is talking about the lo tase of cursing your parents, then it's very relevant. If it's not, it still might give insight. Okay, this is a cool idea though. Kasher hanefesh misoreres lihinakim min hamazik. When the soul is aroused or stimulated or motivated to take revenge from someone who harms, fi tsuras hanezek hanirshemes b'dimayon, in accordance with the image or the form of the harm that is impressed upon the imagination. I'll explain this in a second. Lo sechtal mihis orarusa ad asher tanish as hamazik kafi tsuras hanezek shenikba b'dimayon. The soul will not cease from this state of arousal until it punishes the damager in proportion to the form of the harm that is established in the imagination. And V'kasher, I'll explain in a second. V'kasher tanishehu, and when it punishes it, tashech osa ha hisorus, then that arousal will dissipate, will cease. The tedar osa hatsura, and that image will vanish. Min hadimayan, from the imagination. Okay, so what is he saying? So he's saying like this. Let's say you I don't know, let's say you insult me or you make fun of me or something like that. Okay, so there's two things that's happening. Okay, there's your action, and then there's my impression or my imagination of the harm. Now, in reality, you're not actually harming me. You're just saying words and hurting my feelings or whatever. And it's not even you hurting my feelings. It's me reacting defensively or whatever to your insult. So in my imagination, though, it's a harm. Okay, and now I have a harm. Let's just say, like, you know, if there's we'll just make up a unit. Let's say like it's 20 units of harm, or if it was a bad insult, it's like 50 units of harm. So I've got this like amount and this image of harm. So that image in my imagination makes me upset and arouses me to take revenge. And what happens is I punish you until I've punished you 20 or 50 units worth of harm. And then my motivation for revenge ceases, and that image of harm goes away. Okay, so cursing, according to the way the Rambam is expressing it, cursing someone is an immature form of taking revenge. Now, all revenge is going to be immature, but it's immature in the sense that, like, it's just you interacted with me in a way that produced a harm in my mind, and I'm just going to keep on like harming you until I've like used up that quantity or whatever, you know. And then let's see if, I don't know how far is relevant. Let's just go on one more. Yesh shetani shehu. Oh yeah, here we go. Yesh shetani shehu b'klala v'cheruf bilvad v'tashech. There are some people who will punish the perpetrator with a curse and with an insult alone, and then that will dissipate their anger or their desire for revenge. Once they know the value or the quality of harm that reached the damager through those statements, and how embarrassed the guy is. So in other words, some people, if they just curse the guy out or insult him, then that's enough for revenge. The There are those for whom the matter is greater. There's some people whose desire for vengeance will not dissipate until they destroy all the guy's property, and then it'll dissipate. Once they know the suffering that the guy will experience when his property is lost. There are some people who are even worse. And their arousal will not cease until they punish the guy in his body, in like physically hitting him, and taking off his limbs. Some people are even worse. Other people will not cease until they take the guy's soul and annihilate him from existence. Zohi hataklis. That's the ultimate extent. Some people have a little bit of arousal in the soul to seek out punishment for the damager because of the lightness of the chait. And those people it'll dissipate once they just yell at them or get angry at them. The kilolaso and cursing him. Even if they don't hear the matter, if they're present there. So in other words, like sometimes the first category was I actually insult you and then I see you get hurt by the insult. Some people like can just go into their either not in the presence of the person or go into their room and just like curse out the guy, and that's enough. And it's because it's all in your imagination, so it doesn't even have to literally affect the guy. This is very well known for people who have a short temper. Their soul will be put at rest in a small amount like this with light transgressions. Even though the sinner does not know about their anger and doesn't hear their curse. So the Havamina is you might think that the Torah only prohibits cursing because of the suffering and shame that will reach the guy who you're cursing. But if you curse a deaf person, since he doesn't hear, and he's not suffering because of this, then there's no sin in the matter. Therefore, maskana, the Torah made it known that it is prohibited, and he and he's warned about it. The Torah is not only concerned about the station of the insultee, the person who's insulted. It's also looking at the situation of the insulter. That the Torah does not want him to arouse his soul for vengeance and does not want to accustom him to anger. And that's why it says, that's why Chazal learned that it's also to curse anybody. Okay, that was the Rambam's explanation of cursing. So very interesting explanation there. So does this help us in our cursing of the parents? Pasuk. But just to summarize, right? So cursing? The Rambam links cursing to taking revenge, and it's the lightest form of taking revenge because it's only in your imagination. And so you have cursing when they don't hear it, cursing when they do hear it, damaging their property, damaging their body, and then killing them. That's the levels. So what do you call it? And what happens is you are aroused to take revenge because of a perceived harm, and you keep on doing it until you feel like you reach the shear of the harm that you received. Yeah. Because one of the questions we raised was do the parents deserve it or not? Let's just examine both sides, okay? So if the parents don't deserve it, so then clearly this guy has problems. that he's just, let's say his parents raised him and provided for him and all this other good stuff, like, normal situation. And yet he feels compelled to act out aggressively against them in this childish way, so that definitely will affect his soul. I mean, he's just completely, it's all the bad stuff we just said. Not only does he lack gratitude or not want to acknowledge like the cause of his existence, but he's like, he feels that he's been harmed when he hasn't, so whatever that's stemming from, like, it's not good for his perception of reality. And if they do deserve it, it still is immature for him to curse his parents, because you're not actually accomplishing anything. You're just in your own head, So it seems to not really, it seems to not matter in terms of like the act of cursing. I'm really inclined to say that the ner is his intellect, going with that approach. Ner Hashem nishmas Adam. I'm having a hard time seeing past the vagueness of the idea that we said from before. What was that?
What we just leave off
on? Just seeing how the Rambam changes our view of the pasuk, if it does. We could do Mefarshim. You want to do Mefarshim? Okay, let's do Mefarshim. All right. So let's start. We did the Mitzvahs David last time, which was not helpful because he talked about Olam Haba. Let's try out the Meiri. Right column above the Mitzvahs David. Makala aviv imo yidach nero b'yishun choshech. Makalel kola kol mine bizayon. Okay, so he is expanding Makalel from cursing to all types of degradation. So it means one who degrades his parents. Ki kilas elokim. Okay, so that's a good raya, right? So that's in the pasuk about not leaving after you execute certain people, then you hang them briefly and then you take down their corpse. Because it is considered a bizayon to God to have a person created b'tzelem Elokim hanging. So, and the way the pasuk says is ki kilas Elokim talui, because the cursing of Elokim is hanging. So that doesn't mean cursing. They didn't curse God. It means there's a degradation. So that's a good raya. Pirusha bizayon Elokim. Okay. V'amar shem makle aviv imo be'ezeh tzad. Anyone who degrades his parents in any way, yidach nero, his candle will go out, b'shah shehit srichalo, at a time when he needs it, b'ishon choshech, which is in the blackness of night. B'ishon pirusho shachros, so it means blackness. Klomar, b'shachros halayla v'hachoshech. Okay, so he didn't explain the mashal yet. V'hu he'ara b'yud onesh torii osipur hamoni. Okay, so either this is promising Torah punishment, or it's talking about just everyday stuff. Because even if this guy is distinguished in one way, I think he means like socially distinguished, all of his virtues are lacking, or will be lacking, to the point where it's like he's void of any virtue. Just like his candle goes out in a place of darkness. Okay, so he's not really giving much by way of explanation. Let's see if we can figure it out, though. So he's saying that it doesn't matter if you are nichbad, if you are an honored person, but if you degrade your parents, so then it's going to seem like you don't have any virtues. Yeah, that's what I'm getting, because it says ad shishar kim meshula mikol ma'ala. But then he also said before, Texar Bazeh Kol Malosav. So I don't know if he means seeming to other people or just it's easier to see how it can seem like that, as opposed to, it's not like you actually lack all of your virtues. Like, I'm trying to think of an example of this. Like there are people who are, people who are, who just have a bad relationship with their parent, but like they're charitable and like they're kind and all this other stuff, but like with their parent, it's bad. It is funny though that like I feel like there is a category, and maybe this is just like an idiom in America of like when let's say someone like uses bad language, and they're like, oh, would you talk to your mother with that mouth? Like that kind of thing. I don't know if that has anything to do with this, but in other words, I'm using that as an example of like people gauge, not even gauging the way they relate to their parents. If they relate to their parents in a negative way, then it doesn't matter how well they treat other people. It's like there's something fundamentally wrong if you relate to your parents that way. I'm just having a hard time putting together the parish here, because he said that thing before of, if you degrade your parents in any way, your candle will go out at a time when you need it. And he didn't explain what that means.
There's like a certain like respect and reverence that is expected for one to treat others that are close to them.
Yeah.
Even if they disagree with them, there's a certain like a proximity and closeness that there's like a certain point like you don't, they're like higher like levels of lines you don't cross with people that you're close to compared to a relationship with.
I see.
I think particularly parents, which you come along with, like they've raised you, they're
Right.
the ones who brought you into the
Right.
world. And also, I know other things we were discussing about, like they were the ones who like coordinating to those who like authorities and those who taught you.
Right.
So there's something like fundamentally wrong with a person if they treat those relationships improperly.
Right. So that I didn't finish reading this, but if you look at the Sefer Chukah, who's on the left side above the Mitzvot, I think he says something like that based on the previous pasuk. So he says, "Makala aviv imo lefishi hikdim." Since this was preceded by the other pasuk, ulefoses fasav, one who is we said lip idiot, right? A lip idiot. She'ein ma'atzor ledavarav, that there's no restraint to his speech. V'yarchiv pihu ledaber rik v'kazav v'cherfos v'gidufin v'dofi b'bnei adam. He widens his mouth. He's learning poseh as not fool, but widening. He widens his mouth to speak emptiness and lies and insults and degradations and blemishes of people. Uposeh b'kan lashon tirgum ki yarchi, which means to widen his lips. Are yafti v'demehu yafti l'kim liyafes. Okay, fine. Right, that's just grammar. So the widening of his mouth causes him to curse his father and mother. Therefore, his candle will go out. Okay, let's finish reading. I only read that part. Let's see if he ties it in. V'ishon samach choshech v'chavero b'inyano b'ishon laila ba'afela v'chein k'ishon eno osa ha'shichur b'ayin. Okay, so that was the that's all he says for that interpretation. So I think it's connected in the sense that we're saying that there are certain restraints that naturally prevent you from saying what you're feeling or thinking, or just the way that you act, and the ordinary person has those in place, and like the more revered, or I guess not the closer, but the more revered your relationship is to that person, then the more restraints you're going to have. And this guy who we're talking about here, I don't think he's saying that our pasuk is talking specifically about a poseh fasayim, but he's saying it's a similar phenomenon where there's a restraint that should be there that is not there, and that's causing you to just like degrade your parents. It's kind of, I know this is kind of like a cultural difference, but do you ever know anybody who like calls their parents by their first name? It's a very bizarre experience to see. Like I've met, it's more common in the non-Jewish world, and even there it's not common, but it's just very weird, and there's like some feeling that you've crossed a line in the reverence department that could have other like ramifications in terms of like a certain loosening of behavior in other areas, that like that's the vibe I get,
Yeah.
So that might be an interesting gateway to the pasuk, because up until now we've been either assuming that makalo aviv imo is an extreme behavior, or if you take the Meiri's way, then it's not extreme, but it is something like, that like degrading your parents, But if you look at see, in other words, we've been looking at degrading as a positive negative act. What I mean by that is like an act of negativity. But the way you're framing it, and the way that the Sefer Chukah is framing it, is like if you allow the restraints to be loosened, and it expresses itself in some sort of manner of degradation. That's anyone can be subject to. In other words, like you might not be the type of person who curses your parents or does an act with the intent to degrade them, but I think everyone falls into a pattern, where they will, in certain moments of the heat of the moment, you'll like speak to your parent in a way that is not respectful, or you'll like not treat them with the respect that they deserve, and you like let that like restraint go. That I'm not saying that it has to be that way, but I like that interpretation because it universalizes the pasuk to apply to potentially everybody instead of being like, oh, that guy who curses his parents, So could we get an idea there? No one's really explaining the yidach nero be'eshon choshech, That's the difficult part. One thing, by the way, just to call your attention to, which I don't feel bad reading now because he barely says anything. Look at Rashi on the pasuk. So Rashi says be'eshon choshech behin shif, when it gets dark, behishcher choshech, when the darkness gets black, klomar bevo hara'a, when bad comes. Okay, so we have three interpretations, or two. Okay, well, we have at least two interpretations for darkness. Darkness either is when you need a candle, or darkness is a mashal for trouble, for bad. It's kind of a funny thought. It's funny. You guys, I mean, not universally, but like people in New York, it's just funny. There's no darkness that you encounter on a daily basis here. I mean, I'm sure you've been in places where there is like New Hampshire or whatever, but like it is crazy. It just occurred to me that there's just like there's no darkness at night.
See, it never sleeps.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I know it's bad. Yeah, but like if you've ever been in a place like outdoors or whatever, when it's a moonless night with cloud cover or whatever, it's just like the experience of walking around in pitch black outside is a crazy experience. So I feel like the reason why I'm saying that is like, and you could say the pasuk is just being poetic, but in the blackness of night is a very vivid experiential thing, and I wonder if that's relevant. And the other thing also is if we say yidach nero flickering out, that's like in all the horror movies when they're like in the basement and then like the flashlight goes out and then they're dropped into pitch black. Like it's not just that you won't have a candle when you need it most. It's that you were using it and then it flickers out, and that's that's worse than just not having it at the outside,
Yeah, I thought of working with the Sefer Hukah.
Yeah.
And in the blackness of the night, where there you're going to need to know like who to call on or what to call upon.
Yeah.
And it's like actually physical object, what to call upon.
Right.
If you relate to all things the same and all things equivocally, then you would call just as well someone who's not going to be able to help you as well as someone that would be able to help you. You're going to look for an object that will be something that's like won't provide light just as well as something that will provide light.
Yeah.
You relate to all things equally without actually seeing them and framing them or relating to them in a proper way.
Right. Right. That's a good motion for darkness. So can we connect that to either interpretation? Because you're saying that the lack of restraint is the Sefer Chukah connection?
I wasn't saying lack of restraint, but it's just not relating to things
like, based on what they are and who they are to you. Yeah. Okay, here's a wild interpretation. Okay, so, and it's only wild not because it's not true, but because I have no idea if Mishlei would go in this direction. So if we assume that we are talking about a young child, okay, and if we're talking about a child who, for whatever reason, is either someone who literally curses his parents or who degrades his parents in some sort of aggressive way. So what's going to happen is when he grows up, then when he faces darkness, which I think I'm going to go with the tsaros or the bavo ra'ah thing. So there's not going to be a foundation of security that he can fall back on, and I'm getting this from this book on trauma that I read of The Body Keeps the Score, that when therapists are involved in treating people who experience trauma, one of the bedrocks of treatment is finding some relationship that the person had where they felt safe and accepted, and then tapping into that feeling, but the problem is if the person never had that, so then it makes therapy and recovering from trauma very, very difficult, because there's no foundation, that they have for that. Let's say, for example, if you had a kid who was from a war-torn region and his parents were killed, and he just was going from foster home to foster home, just never had that basis of security and love and acceptance, so you can't just conjure that up. If it's there, you can help the person get back to it and tap into it, so what I'm wondering is if this person had this tumultuous relationship with his parents, so then what the pasuk might be saying is that when Sarah comes, it's going to be a tremendously frightening and insecure experience, like your candle flickering out in the blackness of night, because you don't have that framework of security, And the reason why I'm saying that, so I think it's a true idea. I just don't know if Mishlei goes that deep into psychology, in terms of recognizing that the foundation of your security is the way you relate to your parents. I do think Mishlei or Torah really does say that about your relationship with God is going to be based on your relationship with your parents. The Torah definitely recognizes that, but I don't know about this. You want to see another wild one? Now they're going with wild ones. Look at the Meiri and the Derech Nister. Okay, first words online. Derech Nister, haklala hevech bracha. So this is okay. We have klala meaning cursing. We have klala meaning degradation. This is a third interpretation. Klala is the opposite of bracha, like in the klalas in the Torah. V'ramaz shehabracha hi tosefes, rak haklala chesaron. So bracha means addition of good. Klala means lack of good. Okay, so what is the pasuk saying? V'aviv romez al hachelik hanechbad. Aviv means your intellect. Imo al hachomer, and your mother is a remez to your physicality. That's all he gives us.
That's all.
I mean, he gives another interpretation after this. O remez I'll read it anyway. It's short. O remez lenefesh ner Hashem nishmas adam. Okay, it could be the nefesh. Now I don't know why he. I think the nefesh is the chelik hanechbad. I'm not sure. He says, "Amar shamachaser osam mechukam haroi lahem." If you deprive them, he's still going with the klala meaning deprivation or privation. If you deprive them of what they need, tovad nafsho begehinnom, your soul will be lost in Gehinnom. Shuhu hanikra ishon choshech, which is called the blackness of night. But I'm more curious about the first one. So what does that even mean to Makalel aviv imo, if you deprive your intellect and your physicality? I mean, yeah, obviously that's not good. No one can argue that that's good. But who's doing that? And I understand someone who would be Makalel, according to this interpretation, aviv, but not imo, because usually that's how it is, right? Is that you neglect your intellect, but you prioritize your body. But who's Makalel aviv imo? Just a weird feels like one of these things where he has it in his muscle decoding thing. Oh yeah, aviv means intellect and body. Let's just plug it into here. But there's no explanation for how it actually plays out. It's funny. Look at footnote 85. Re'eh Mor Nevuchim Aleph Yud Zayin. Okay, so I guess I'll have to look at that later, but I guess the Rambam gives that interpretation. Urei Melamed HaTalmidim Toldos Dibur Maskov V'Hu Kiven HaChacham Bereshis Dibur Maskov V'Acharze Shekasav Amnam. I don't know who this is. Amnam HaKaravitz Li Ki HaChomer Kara HaChacham Shlomo HaMelech Aim B'Sefer Hazeh Mishlei Uvuzulaso V'Hu Ha'inyan B'Amro B'nei Imi Nicharubi. So it's in Shir Shirim. So in other words, my guess is if he's referring to the more Nevuchim, I'm just going to look at it really quickly. He's saying that the Rambam endorses this interpretation of mother as your physicality. I think part of that was based on an Aristotelian belief that like the father provides the form of the human and the mother provides the matter. But I don't know if that's what the Rambam says. Let me just look at this really quickly. Yud Zayin. Let's see. Emo. Nope. Of. There's a lot of Av references. Okay, can't find it right now. All right, so we had several approaches here, but a lot more remains to be done. We're not going to continue it tomorrow, but like it's very, very confusing, difficult one to crack. But hopefully this paves the way for next time we approach the pasuk, but whenever that may be. Okay.